Today I'm going to spend a little bit more time with you all since it is the weekend, and therefore I have a little bit more time to talk about the stories that are the real life stories of the impossible, the name of my show. We're going to be talking about pendulums and the foreseeing pendulum. We're going to talk about telepathic voicemails and how to send those out to people. We're going to talk about finding parking spaces as a manifestation ritual. And we're also going to talk about possibly how to how to potentially win the lottery using the powers of the mind and one's unconscious thoughts. So, if you're interested, stay tuned and we will talk about that. For the meantime, if you are interested in continuing to hear stories that are impossible, that are real life, in other words, stories that happen to me or friends of mine, please subscribe to this page. Please like, share, comment, and let's keep this going. I'm new at this, so just be aware that we're working on this. So, um, the first story that I will talk to you about is going to be about on Mondays we've been doing this thing called Magical Mondays, which basically means that I'm going to do a little bit of something. I'm not sure what, some kind of hocus pocus of some sort that causes you to just think for a second and be surprised for a minute, and so that's happening on Mondays now. So hopefully you'll tune in for that. Tuesday through Friday, I talked about a variety of different things. We talked about pendulums and how it actually predicted the sex of my, at that time I didn't know, but eventually it turned into my daughter. We're going to talk about sending telepathic voicemails to people that you haven't spoken to in a long time. Maybe they'll actually somehow reach out to you. And then we talked about the lottery and how I was actually able to help a complete stranger at the time who's remained friends with me ever since. So we've become friends ever since the day that I actually sunk deep into my thoughts and sincerely tried to give him winning lottery numbers. And in fact, I found out that I did. So that'll be all fun. And then because of the fact that oftentimes things like opportunity and abundance and money out of nowhere are things that you might want to wish for, but maybe feel a little apprehensive about wishing for those things simply because you don't think it's going to come, or you have some kind of disbelief about it. I'm just going to say that there is a way for you to work on manifestation without just outright saying, but I need $1 million right now. So there are ways of being able to do that and make that work. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. So for right now, let's begin with the pendulum. All right. The story was that when my wife was in her third trimester of pregnancy, a woman from a Persian woman actually showed her how to use a pendulum. She basically had her take her wedding band, put it around her gold necklace, hang that off the end of her finger, held it over the palm of her hand, and watched to see the direction of the swing. And when she observed the swing was a circle, she claimed that we were going to have a girl. And so when I said, how is that possible? She said, well, it's a circle. A girl means circle, and a straight line means that it's going to be a boy. And that's very interesting to me, just because, as I said on Tuesday, that this was interesting because it reminded me of sacred geometry. It reminded me of this. This is a buzzword that you can look up called sacred geometry. And the idea is that shapes influence the universe. And so the shape of a circle actually does sort of remind you of, say, a feminine type of shape. And the shape of a line would remind you of like a guy for reasons that are clear. But for interestingly, what's interesting is that the pendulum only works in that way. In other words, it only will swing in a straight line. Now, granted, it will swing forward and backwards, and it'll swing left to right, but it won't necessarily swing in any other direction other than a straight line or an oval or a circle. But usually when it's in an oval form, it's in the process of either going to a straight line or going into a circle. So just watch it and observe it and see what kind of sacred geometry is revealed. And what you find out is that possibly there is some kind of a connection between say, the sex of an unborn child and the swing of a pendulum. And this is the reason why this is interesting is because it's been around for thousands of years. It's been around, all the dating way back into, uh, I don't know, maybe it goes back to the Sumerians, because this goes back into like the Persian, Mesopotamian type of culture. So I don't know. I'm just saying that that this is it's a long time that they've been using. I'm willing to say that the pendulum might be one of the oldest traditional methods of divination to date. Probably the oldest traditional method of divination to date. There are other methods that involve like tarot cards and like maybe reading the lines in the palm of your hand and stuff like that. But and those methods are traditional as well. But then there are other older methods that are things like taking turtle shells and throwing them into a fire and watching them crack and stuff. And all of that information, by the way, can be found in my book, and my book is called State of Mind. And so if you're interested in any of these stories, and a lot of the stories that I actually talk about during my shows of real life stories of the impossible actually do come from State of Mind. Some of them are newer than State of Mind because I continue to experience strange things throughout my life, and I try to remain open. That's the important thing, is that rather than being skeptical and thinking that the strange things are worth forgetting about, what I try to do is I try to remember specifically the stranger things that happen in my life, and I try to collect them as sort of just stories that I can later tell to you all. And so I think that that's a way of being able to go about your life that is a little bit more honest, rather than trying to believe that you know all the answers to everything. Why not be honest to yourself and say, well, I don't know all the answers, and maybe I can find something out by being curious about something. So we talked about the sacred geometry of the pendulum, but let me tell you about how you might be able to use a pendulum and what you can use for a pendulum. Because the fact is that a lot of people think that you have to have like a wedding band and a gold necklace. You don't. You can have just a regular piece of cotton thread and a paper clip, for that matter, and that's all it takes. Just hang like a little weighted bob by a string and hold it in your hand, and what will happen is you will create an ideomotor response that creates the sensation, the experience of having a pendulum happen. So basically the bob will move either left or right or forwards or backwards, or it'll move in a circle, and it'll move clockwise or counterclockwise, and it doesn't matter so long as you just recognize the shape or the direction that it's actually going. One way that you can calibrate a pendulum is by holding it so that it's directly over the center of your palm, or over a center point of any kind, like even like a something that's sitting on the table, so that you can have it centered and stay still for a second, and then concentrate on the word yes by just nodding your head. So if you nod your head once and you concentrate on the word yes, what you might notice is that the muscular reaction will cause the pendulum to move forward and backward from to and from your chest, basically to and fro from your chest. What you'll do is allow that to acknowledge within your subconscious that that means yes, and then what you can do is let it stay still again, bring it back to neutral, still position, and then just say no and nod and shake your head like this. And what will happen is, again, the muscular reaction of you shaking your head will cause the pendulum to move back and forth, left to right in this particular way. And so you can calibrate yourself to saying yes or no, and then watch the pendulum, and then you can ask the pendulum certain questions if you're uncertain about things, whether or not if you want a yes or no answer to something, you can ask for a yes or no. So hypothetically, if you're really tuning into consciousness and you wanted to win the lottery, you could say, is one of the numbers going to be a 1? And watch for it to either go back and forth or side to side. But I'll say that that's not the way that I was able to reach getting the lottery numbers. So that's one method of being able to do that, is to use something like a pendulum that gives you simple yes and no responses to your subconscious. And some people will ask. In fact, even Michel Chevreul, who was the first scientist to coin the term the ideomotor response, which is what we're talking about, the micromuscular response that causes the pendulum to move, is what's called the ideomotor response. And Michel Chevreul, this French scientist who coined the term, believed that if you knew about what it was, if you knew that you were talking to your subconscious, that it won't work. But eventually it became pretty much common knowledge among hypnotists and people who study deep into the ideomotor response that it doesn't matter. Even if you told them that it's your subconscious, even if you told yourself that it was your subconscious that was making it work, you would be surprised at how your subconscious, the thing that is uncertain within your mind, actually does make a decision for you in that moment. And so it's very interesting. Try it at home, see how well it works with you, because it is a tool that can be used to access your subconscious, the pendulum. And then what I'm going to do also, just because I noticed that there's a little bit of interest in the pendulum, is I'll make Wednesdays, okay? I'm going to make Wednesdays my Pendulum Wednesdays. All right, and we'll talk a little bit more because there's a lot to talk about with regards to the pendulum. So let's just make Pendulum Wednesdays on Wednesdays from this point until I feel like I need to change it up. But so be prepared to see me on Wednesday to talk a little bit more about the pendulum. I'll just give you some real quick things that you can do to just sort of to engage yourself with that. But for right now, let's talk about other aspects of the subconscious and consciousness that may access other ways of being able to use your mind with your life. Another person who I spoke about, who I haven't spoken to in a long time before this, was a friend of mine from going back to like my early 20s. This would be a friend of mine named Cynthia, and I spoke about her on, I think, Wednesday or Thursday, and Cynthia was very influential to my early life as a mystery artist, because she was actually interested in ceremonial magic. So she studied the books of Aleister Crowley. She studied she used to listen to psychic TV. She was like she was a person who I'd never met anybody like her before that. And when I did, I realized that I had met like kind of like a young shamaness in a way. And she really did teach me a lot about just accessing and how to access real magic without being, gullible or stupid about it. There's a way of being able to understand it in a way that makes sense to the mind. And so she was somebody who was influential in my life early on, and then we lost touch. So what happened was, I ended up getting married. Cynthia and I never dated or anything like that. We were actually really just close friends. But when I got married, it just made things difficult. We ended up separating our ways, and I lost touch with a lot of my friends actually after that. And so for like over 20 years, we ended up losing touch, and we never found out where we were. And of course, it kind of happened before social media that we lost touch. So I didn't know how to reach her with social media, and when I did, I found out that she was nowhere to be found. So I would think about her. I started talking about her to other people. I started talking about her to other people and started telling them about stories about she and I and the things that we used to go through and the bands that we used to see and the places that we used to go and the things that we would talk about and the things that would make me feel a little bit closer to understanding where I am right now, just by having known her back then. So after doing this for like a couple of months, it was just so strange because I hadn't spoken to her in over 20 years, and suddenly I got an email from her. Somebody had randomly sent her a newsletter of mine, and she responded to it saying, "Is this you? Is this my old friend Alain?" And there you go. Suddenly we were back in touch. We spoke, and we had a great time speaking, and we've been in touch ever since. I just talked to her the other day, telling her that I made a little video show for her on YouTube. So that was exciting. It was exciting to be able to reach out to somebody. Who do you know that you might be able to psychically send a telepathic voicemail. And have you ever actually done that? Please comment below and let me know if that's ever happened to you, because it's an interesting one, being able to reach out to old friends through the powers of your mind. I like that notion, and I've actually done that more than once. It's not just with Cynthia. I've done that with a number of people, but Cynthia was the most recent person who I've done this with. Other ways of being able to access the mind is, so focus is one way. Basically, I just focused on her and talking about her and bringing her back into my life by bringing her memory back into my life that allowed her to, I'm just going to guess that that's what it was that allowed her to somehow reach back out to me. But who knows? Maybe it was just me coming up with some magical reason for how she would reach back out to me. But nonetheless, I think that it's very, very interesting how those kinds of things do happen from time to time. I'm sure that this has happened with other people out there. So back in 2015, I was performing for the National Association of Corporate Directors in Washington, D.C. It was at the Park Hyatt, and I met this guy who calls himself Rev T. His name is Tavon Fennell, and Rev T was a guy that everybody at that event, they all knew who he was. He's like a very charismatic fellow, and he's like a hype man for at that time they were called the Washington Redskins. Now it's the Washington football team, but he's still working and doing promotions for them, and he does a lot of benefits in which actually help kids with Down syndrome and kids with learning disabilities, and it helps to bring supplies to schools. He manages to bring certain players out to certain functions in order to continue the excitement of the Washington football team here in Washington, D.C., where we are right now. Rev T came up to me after my show. First, he challenged me with actually not a bent spoon, but a completely straight and solid spoon from the Park Hyatt, which I was then able to bend. And then he said, "You know what I want you to do now? I want you to give me 4 numbers." And when I asked him what they were for, he told me that it was for the Pick 4 lottery. So though I am not one to generally do things like lottery types of effects for myself, I generally think that if I'm going to create abundance or create some kind of prosperity for myself, that I will do so through some kind of other form of manifestation that will give opportunity to me, that will create abundance. Whereas in this particular case, this was a person who maybe felt the need that he needed a little extra cash that year. Maybe he was feeling something different. I don't know what it was. I just knew that I just decided that I was going to do this for him. And so rather than just kind of creating a little bit of BS for him at that moment, because I didn't want to do that. When I think of myself as a mystery artist, I do think of myself as somebody who has the potential of actually accessing some unknown energy. And so the first thing is to just kind of believe in who you are and believe that you can maybe do this, because you never know why random stuff ends up in your brain. So I just closed my eyes, and as I'm just meditating there, a crowd forms. People are going, "What's he doing? What's he doing?" And Rev T goes, "He's about to give me my Pick 4 lottery numbers for tomorrow." And so people are just curious, and I just go, 8, 6, 1, 4. And then I open my eyes. And people are going, "That's the number?" And he's like, "That's the number I'm going to bet on." So I just kind of said, "Well, let me know how it goes." So a couple of weeks passed after that, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. But then he sent me an email, and the email, let's see if I can even find it. I might even be able to find it. Let's see. The email that he sends me basically says this. Here we go. He goes, "It was awesome meeting you on Saturday. I enjoyed your show. Most of all, I enjoyed the person that you are." Yes. The numbers that you gave me, 8614, came out, but I only had a few dollars on it, and it hit. I should have listened, but that changed and helped my 4 daughters get presents this year. what I want to do with the Kids Foundation, and he starts talking about the stuff that he wants to do for me and stuff, and what he wants me to do for him. And he, if you see the photograph in the little thumbnail that I added, it's with him wearing like a Washington football team logo in the front, and then on the back it says "Believe." And so it's all about belief. And so I felt that this was a very interesting moment, because in the moment I had to like take myself out of disbelief and put myself into a state of mind in which I just believed that I might be able to give him some numbers. It turns out that the numbers that he picked, 8614, were actually correct. And in the end, he just recently even responded to my YouTube story last Thursday about him, or last Friday about him, and he said that everything that I said was true, and that he made about $3,000 from that. And so it wasn't huge change, but it was $3,000, and that's like serious Christmas money, if you ask me. Um, so how do you do it? You do it by first believing in yourself, and you just allow random stuff to kind of come into your mind while thinking about, maybe if you think about gratitude on some level. I think that gratitude oftentimes helps to add some element of genuineness to whatever wish that you want fulfilled. So that was basically what I did with that. If you have any questions regarding regarding lotteries or prosperity or anything like that, please comment below. I'm going to talk a little bit about manifestation at some point in the future, in which I talk about how rather than just straight to prosperity, you can manifest opportunity that will come to you and will eventually give you prosperity. And I think that that's a little bit more of a genuine way of going about it, using what you have inside your mind to create a roadmap for you to get to where you need to be opportunistically. Besides that, what else did we talk about? Oh, that's right. We talked about prayer. Okay. Now the reason why we talked about prayer is because basically I personally just think that if you were to do a poll on everybody in the entire world and ask them what the most powerful human ability actually is, I would say that they might believe, as a whole of humanity might say, that it's the power of prayer. And so I think that that's interesting, because I would say that the most common Western way of going about things is to go about doing things using just rational and common sense, logical thinking. But I will say that everything that you do right now is towards what you're going to be doing in the future. And almost everything, so our system as human beings is actually created in such a way that we are actually moving forward, and we're thinking about the future before we even get there. Therefore, almost everything that we do within our minds has to do with how we're going to govern our future. And if that's the case, perhaps prayer is one of the ways that we do it. So one of the ways that we do it is through hope and through prayer. And so when somebody is not feeling well, if somebody is, a lot of times prayer does have an effect on healing. It's been scientifically shown in various different studies, and enough so that it's worth considering that the more prayer you put towards someone's well-being, the more energy gets shifted in that particular direction, to the point where that person might actually feel some element of comfort, or some element of something shifting inside them that makes it work. So with that in mind, one of the things that I did earlier this week, I think on Wednesday, is I put out a certain prayer to my friend Max Maven. He's not a really good friend of mine, but he is actually a contemporary of mine as a mentalist, and he's one of the world-class legendary mentalists who is still alive today. But he just got out of the hospital. He's gone through some surgery this past year, and I know that he's moving around and he's doing really well. So if you're watching this, Max, hey, and I'm so glad to know that you're out there. Please continue to show people that you are the true OG of mentalism. And please, if you don't know Max Maven, or even if you do, please send out a little energy in his direction, because I know that he would like that and would find that to be something that he would appreciate very much. So stay in touch with me, the man who knows, by simply going to my website at www.themanwhoknows.tv and subscribe to my newsletter. By doing so, you'll actually be able to follow my whereabouts. You won't just see me here in this room, but you'll see me in other places performing for live people and virtually as well, because I do both live and virtual shows. And then let's see. The final thing that I will say is that one way that you can practice prayer is through what we will call the parking manifestation method. And so you can practice manifestation and you can practice prayer by simply seeing if you can get a parking space, and do that. I would say that the next time you go out into a busy place, I want you to just before you go out, think to yourself that you're going to get a parking space right outside of that area, or within like a couple of blocks, within like a block or so from the area that you need to be, and put out that manifestation in such a way that it's like you're tuning into a person in that area to become inspired to leave the area just before you pull in. And so that way, just as he's pulling out of the parking spot or she's pulling out of the parking spot, you can then just pull right in and nobody ends up stealing it from you. How many of you actually have done that? I will say that this is something that I do on a regular basis because I drive everywhere, and because I park in really just nasty, busy cities, that I'm always doing the parking prayer, and you would be surprised at how well it works. I'm going to close this section. I know we're kind of running a little bit long, but I see a couple of people are out there. I'm going to close this section by just saying that there's a funny story of me doing this. So, and it has to do with Max Maven, in fact. I was off to see his show, Thinking in Person, in New York City at the Abingdon Theater. And I had decided to rent a VW Bug to take up to New York. And it was really because I had to go see him perform in New York, and then I had to go do another show a little bit further up in New York, and then I had to come back down. And by doing so, I decided to rent a car. Normally I drive an Audi, but this time I drove a VW Bug. VW Bugs don't have as large gas tanks as Audis do. So anyway, we're driving along, or I'm driving along, and I blow by all the different service areas on the New Jersey Turnpike from Washington, D.C. to New York, and suddenly I realized that the gas tank is nearly empty. And I just, I was listening to music, I was like having a great time, I wasn't really paying much attention to anything, but suddenly I'm almost out of gas. And I realized that I'm also almost in New York, and I've blown by all of the service stations, and there's no more service stations before I get to New York. Then I also realized that so then I also realized that I'm gonna be late to the show if I even get gas. But so we'll see where that goes in a second. I'm driving along. I've got wall-to-wall traffic on both sides of me. There's traffic literally on all sides, front, back, side, and suddenly I run out of gas. I'm talking to a friend of mine at the time, and my friend is asking me what I will do when I run out of gas. And I said, maybe call 911. And so suddenly I run out of gas. There's nothing I can do. It's time to get off the phone and call 911. I call 911, and they ask me where I am. And I say, well, I'm about a mile away from the Port Authority, what do you call it? Those ticket booths. So where you get the toll booth. So at that point, they say, where are you? And I say, well, I'm coming up to this billboard, and I describe the billboard, and they say, oh, well, you're going downhill, so continue to just coast downhill. And I was coasting at this point because I'm out of gas, but I'm coasting, and I'm not blocking anybody yet because everybody's going very, very slowly. So just coasting down this hill, coast all the way down the hill. They said, as soon as you get to the bottom of the hill, you'll see a Port Authority guy. He'll flag you over, and then we'll fill your gas tank, and you'll be good to go. And so I'm like, yes! So I end up going down, and sure enough, I'm completely out of gas. I coast for about more than a mile, and suddenly I end up right down in front of this guy. He fills up my tank, and then I'm good to go again, right? So now I have to get into the city and park my car in order to see Max Maven. And so I put out my parking pair. I'm like, somebody please leave, just as I'm pulling up, right? So I drive into the city, and it's getting closer and closer to the time that his show starts, because everything is like the traffic coming into the city was so bad that I was just late getting into seeing his show. So I drive in. Abington Theater is literally right in the heart of like Center City. So I mean, right in Midtown, and I get up there like around 50th Street or whatever, and I'm putting out my parking pair, and just as I see the Abington Theater on the left hand side, I see somebody on the right hand side pulling out, and it was like bingo, and so I will not deny the parking pair at any given time. And I suggest that you do the same. Just simply put out an intention that somebody will leave just before you arrive, and you'll be surprised at just how well those parking spaces get manifested. Meanwhile, I'll talk a little bit more about manifestation later on, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I know we went a little long. If you have any questions, please comment below. Please subscribe to this page, or to this channel, because I am actually just starting out to the point where I'm calling it a page, not a channel. And I'm hoping that you guys are enjoying my real life stories of the impossible. My name is Alain. I'm the man who knows. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share. Tell your friends. And we'll see you tomorrow with a little bit of Sunday wisdom. All right, take care. Peace.